All right. Hey, everyone. So today I'm going to have a look at a new project. It's called Nocodb. And like the description says, it's an open source alternative to Airtable. It's written in JavaScript and it's powered on the front end by Vue.js. It, yeah, it looks super promising. I mean, the screenshots look amazing and it got featured on Product Hunt. It's got all these really cool deployment techniques. I think the preferred one here is Docker. I'm usually not a huge fan of Docker just because it adds just another abstraction layer that you typically don't need. But in this case, I think it makes sense because there is a lot of configuration that you can mess up. However, they did build also a CLI component with create Nocodb app. And you can also run it locally in this repository, which takes in an NPM package called Nocodb, and then just runs a simple node thread to open it. There's lots of cool projects and features here for this. One of the, I think, most important one is that it comes with a REST API or a GraphQL API out of the box. So this is super special. And yeah, if you've noticed also in the commits, there is a project called XMySQL. It's by one of the founders from Nocodb, O1 Lab. And around 2 months ago, he moved his XMySQL project to Nocodb, or renamed it basically. And yeah, this project, has now received more than 15,000 stars. So people really did take notice. It is playing on this whole no code movement as well, because it makes it very easy for, developers or non-developers to spin up this interactive spreadsheet. And also, if we look at the contributor graph, it's quite fascinating because XMySQL basically was developed all the way here in 2018. And most recently, over the last 3 months, Pranav really picked up the development and with 1.5 million lines of code changed. And yeah, really improved the project and made it to what it is today. So that's pretty cool. If we look at the activity of the project, I think it's very active. They've gotten, over the last week, they've merged, 6 pull requests, closed 12 issues. It's a very healthy ratio. So it's actively maintained. There's not hundreds of pull requests open or hundreds of issues. This is fairly okay for a project that received 15K stars and has over 800 forks and 200 watchers. I think watchers are, the metric that's mostly aligned with people who are really interested in the project, because they want to see, if there's a new issue, if there's a new pull request, if there's a change in commits. So watchers is always, the number that tells you more about the activity of the project. This really is, it's great. 15K stars is great, but it's in the end just a bookmark. Like I bookmarked it, for example. Although I'm actually running it also for myself. Noteworthy is that it's an AGPL license. That means it's a copyleft license. So if you contribute anything back to this project or use this project and contribute anything on top of it, that will automatically become also an AGPL license project. So it's different than MIT license project. But it's that's the way it guarantees that it stays open source, and I think that's a great way. And especially for these standalone projects, it totally makes sense. So because you want to make it better, there's loads of features here. Everyone that used Airtable before kind of knows what to expect. They've got a really nice production setup here as well. Again, everything in Docker and using Docker Compose here. They've got description of the environment variables, and they've also got a description of how to run it locally. That's a bit confusing to me actually, because and you will see why, when we run this locally, actually the backend already gives me a dashboard URL. However, there's still a front-end package called NCGUI, and it gives me also the same dashboard, just on a different port, obviously, because this is the backend and this is the front-end. But yeah, I don't know exactly why. I mean, there's lots of contributors. I think that's fantastic. It's a really active project. And yeah, I guess what I forgot to mention is that it's a monorepo. I think we see more and more of these out there in the wild nowadays, especially with larger complicated projects like this one. So they've got the base repo here, and inside the packages folder, you can actually find all the different npm packages that are within this monorepo. So the Nocodb is actually the backend. This is what we mostly will interact with. We have a docs repo, we have a blog repo. We also have this NCGUI repo, which is the front end written in Nuxt. And we've got an CLI package, which basically creates your create Nocodb app. So it's a command line interface package. So without further ado, I will open it in Gitpod, and I think I still have an instance running, so we should be up to speed very fast. I'll just open it in a separate tab. Oh, what I didn't show you is their website. So they really want you to know that it's open source and an Airtable alternative, even using hashtags from no code. They have really cool and fast free one-click deployments on Heroku. I've got my Heroku right here as well, as we can close. But I first want to play around with the project to show you a bit more what the meat looks like. So when we dive into the package JSON, I think what's important is we want to see what the backend looks like. And we've got basically all our packages here that this project uses. We've got the source. Did I mention this already? That if we don't use a database, it will default to a SQLite database. So if we don't really specify a no-code database URL, it will automatically add a SQLite database. And that's pretty cool. It will also take advantage of Lightstream, which is another cool project that I will highlight in the future. It basically lets you back up and restore different states from SQLite databases to AWS S3 or any kind of other document storage. Yeah. However, in our case, we don't want to. So Nocodb. We don't want to actually run it on a SQLite database. So I'm gonna declare a environment variable here for my Postgres DB. And as everywhere for my Postgres, I will use Railway. Railway is super helpful. Maybe I can show the front page, or it will, yeah. It will basically give you instantaneously access to various kinds of databases, whether it's a MongoDB, Postgres, Redis, MySQL. In our case, I want a PostgreSDB. This is currently empty. We have our connection URL right here. We can't paste it straight away because the format that they're using is slightly different. So right here, we have this, then we have our username is Postgres. We have these parameter variables. Put in our password, and we put in our database, which is called Railway. All right, we save that. We run npm install as always, and yeah, what we can do while it runs npm, we can look at some other ways to deploy. So like I said, there's deploy to Heroku, and we'll probably do this for production. But for now, I want to, really look through the project, and there's this library. There's this file called Noco, and that's really the meat. That's the initializer of the entire project. This is what gets exposed also to all these front-end libraries in the end. And that's kind of the meat, what we're looking at. npm run watch run. This should start our server. And the great thing is with Gitpod is that it will actually detect if there's an open port, and if we want to access that. So it will open two ports, the 8083 and 8080. 8083 is really the or backend port, and 8080 is the port that we want for our dashboard. So I'm gonna open this. And while it's doing something, workshop port not found. This is not ideal, but it's fine. Everything. We've got the port open. Yeah, okay. So maybe there was an issue here. I clicked too fast, but this is basically your interface, and it's a very nice onboarding screen. We open up, we set an email, make sure the password is safe. Just gonna uncheck this, and we get started right away. So we can actually connect to a external database right here, and we can connect to our project. So external database would look something like, either a MySQL or a Postgres that's hosted somewhere. But we don't want to do this right now. So we've already got our Postgres connected. And just to show you that there's actually already something here, you can see all these tables that, everything with NC prefixed, that's kind of like set by the Nocodb service. We can create a new project here. I'm just gonna call it awesome Noco. And yeah, it's a REST API interface. We could also choose a GraphQL interface, but I'll go with that. Let me move my head a bit further down. Some nice confetti animation. Yeah, and while we're in here and everything loads up, we can see our team interface. There's a really cool form that they want to gather feedback on, I guess. We can also open the metadata or the app store, so we can connect with different kind of projects. This is all based on webhooks, but very helpful. The tables are actually created here. I guess we could do that a bit more prominently, but let's just create a task table and a people table. People, actually, we don't want to initialize with a title. That would be weird. People have a name. All right, so we're gonna create a new prime table field here with a single line of text and its name. And while this is loading, it's a nice indicator up here. We can add a new row. We can add a name. Let's add my name. Row has been saved. And now we can also add, let's call a status, and we need to prefix the steady options here. Let's do it simple to do doing done. And we add the status column as well to our database. And while this is, updating in the front-end interface, it actually has to run a migration on the backend. And we can see that when we're refreshing our table, we see that we have a tasks and people table have been added here. And while there's no data yet, we can see that the columns are status and title for the tasks, and name with the entry already for the people table. Example task, and we're gonna say this is a to-do, and this has been saved. And if we actually go back to our tasks, we'll just refresh, we would see that it's also written in here. So this is pretty cool, very neat. Now we could, do all the kind of like manipulation, like filtering, sorting, and so on. We don't want to do that, but we could. Yeah, and it's got all the interfaces like Airtable. Yeah, we can also create API hooks for a specific table, and that's basically a role-based access control. So this is quite neat. We can allow certain people to have certain features via the database. Cool. Yeah, so that was the overview of running basically Nocodb locally, even though my local interface is a Git pod machine. I think what's interesting for everyone here is to see how it runs on an Heroku. That's very straightforward. We can just choose our name, Nocodb MFTS0. That's my Twitter handle. I'm going to choose Europe. And it's got these basically two special variables. Noco one-click deploy for true, and then reject authorization. With this environment variable, it will basically tell the build process what to do. And you can see in the output right here that it's actually pulling various containers and images and preparing basically a Docker application and pushing it. So this will be really fast. And then once that's done, which is already done, we can view it. And yeah, in a bit, you can also see the same onboarding screen as we did right now. It's using under the hood it's using a Postgres resources. It's using a Postgres from Heroku. Here you see running under my Heroku application. Obviously, this is a completely different application, so I have to sign in again from scratch. But it's yeah, it's a very cool project. I really love it. I will dig in a bit deeper. They are open for contributors, so don't be afraid to contribute. And yeah, let's give back to this project. I think it's really cool, and really looking forward to seeing where this develops. The documentation is quite good as well. If we open that, we can see that they really put in a lot of effort also on the documentation side. So yeah, way to go. Just want to say again, shout out to Pranav and O1 Lab. I think they're the key contributors. Of course, there's others as well, but they're just rocking it, and it's a great project, and hopefully they can grow beyond 20,000 stars soon. All right, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next update.